one more segment, but it's not really related to any story. I just want to go into a bit of a few personal anecdotes regarding the Great Resignation. I think that we both have a lot to talk about. I mean, neither of us being in the service industry at all, but I do think this is something that does need to be addressed because I have been noticing a lot of things in regards to consequences of the Great Resignation
Mhm.
and a lot of counter talk that is extremely harmful and does nothing to help out what's going on in our economy right now.
Yeah.
So, for those who don't know, when I refer to the Great Resignation, the Great Resignation has been a catch all term referring to everyone in the service industry and all industries that do not treat their workers well leaving because they do not feel that the minimum wage is sufficient enough for them to stay. So the big thing is that people are now switching to uh, going up in the world, either uh, getting better paying jobs, going higher up on the ladders in different companies, or they are resorting back down to welfare because they feel that the effort that is put is not worth it, so they are going on welfare. Which, before I sound like a conservative, I want to state that they are not doing this to be lazy. They are doing this because they feel it's not worth the effort to be treated like a workhorse in a cog in a system that does not treat them well. So why put in that effort when you can just go on welfare? Now, mind you, it is not easy to stay on welfare, but it cannot be understated that welfare is a last resort that people do need. Now, the reason I talk about this is because recently there there have been two instances at one of my favorite restaurant chains where in one instance I had to wait 40 minutes to get seated, which I mean in a crowd of 20 people is a bit much, but of course they also did have a sign up says "Do not seat yourself. We are low staffed." So clearly, they are trying to combat a combative customer base that feels that they can seat themselves. And then when I go to a different location of the same chain, they closed 3 hours early, and we overheard from other members of the staff that it was because of low staffing. So to put that all into what the main idea I want to elaborate on is that the reason that people are leaving is because they're not getting paid enough. That is the big thing. And we are hearing so much rhetoric from the other side that they are not working hard enough. And it's just so damaging because people in the service industry do not get treated fairly. And if they don't get treated fairly, why do they want to serve for your whiny ass? I mean, I don't want to make general attacks here, but people are not fair to these guys. Like, they serve on wages that have been stifled because of the Cold War, and we have never recovered from it. For those of you who don't know, the main reason we have tipping culture here is because during the Cold War, the economy was stifled quite a bit. So, in order for service workers to make any money, it was encouraged that people tip. Now, ever since our economy recovered from the Cold War, we never got rid of tipping culture as a whole, and thus we are one of the few countries who still have tipping culture. If you speak to any Europeans, they will make fun of us because we still tip. And of course, it is considered rude to tip people in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, he's exactly right. And to add on to the fact that this is more because of how very terrible working conditions are and not out of a mass sense of laziness, the issue with working in service jobs or really any type of low level blue collar work is the fact that it is a thankless job and it is one that is very demanding in time.
Like, there were, like, back in tribal society, people had roles. People had stuff that they loved doing. You had people for certain tasks doing different things. What kind of person has any pride being a box stalker for Amazon? No one. You don't have any joy in that, mostly because Amazon is a horrible company that does not treat anybody on its uh, payroll well at all.
And so the solution isn't get rid of working for Amazon. No. The solution is that Amazon needs to make its workplace and work culture one that when someone says they work there, they say it and it doesn't make them feel terrible about themselves by saying they work there.
And mind you, we do have the power to change them. Remember, Bernie Sanders influenced them to make a permanent change to their minimum wage where it's $15 an hour across the board. So it is clear that we do have the power to do this. And some may argue, well, the reason their work conditions are so poor is because all the money is getting allocated to their wages. And I call BS on that. The reason I call BS on that is because I guarantee you their workers would not have been treated any better if they worked $10 an hour.
Yeah, I mean, if you've heard stories about what happens when you work in an Amazon warehouse, it's anything from you aren't able to use the bathroom for hours on end to very extreme examples. Not to say that this happens in every warehouse, but it's been extreme enough where some people have died while working and the staff still had to keep working despite their coworker having died, which shows that this isn't good. And mind you, this isn't just Amazon. Places like McDonald's or places that like Applebee's or any type of service work or delivery drivers or so on, they do not get treated or paid well for the work that they do. Now, some may argue, well, these are supposed to be entry level jobs. You're not supposed to stay there forever. And well, to that I say, okay, why does that excuse treating them terribly?
Because
So what if it's not a job you're supposed to be working forever? You should still be treated with dignity and you still should make enough money so you can move on. The point of an entry level job is for you to get started and hopefully move up. But if you don't make enough money to move up, that's not an entry level job anymore.
and that argument gets completely eradicated when the moment you think that anybody over the age of 35 is working at Amazon at a entry level job. Let's face it, that's not a fair assessment at all.
Yeah,
Like the only extremes you could ever think of is like maybe a new immigrant family is coming and they're looking for an entry level job that will definitely pay higher than their salary here. That doesn't mean that they. That's just the one exception that I can possibly think of, and even then, that is no excuse to treat them poorly in the workplace.
yeah. And the other thing about it is that the people that are working these jobs aren't young people alone. There are older people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s working in these environments because that's usually all that's available for them. And so, for a lot of these people, this is supposed to
Yeah,
be the job that they'll be working potentially for the rest of their lives. And if that's the case,
and
why are they being punished for that?
and
Why are they being punished with the fact that they aren't making enough money to make ends meet? Isn't the point of working a job, any job, to make money, to benefit yourself and make ends meet while contributing something to society? Why is it that there are some jobs that we consider so much lesser that if you work it, you deserve to be treated terribly just because you work it?
And the reason I really wanted this to be a segment is because it's so easy. It's so easy to shift the blame to the workers. Like you can easily just spout on in your mind, like, why aren't they seating me? This isn't fair. I wanted to eat here. This restaurant should have been open for me. And a lot of that is not in their control, and we have to be nuanced about this. These are not the faults of the workers. This is the faults of industries that refuse to grow past their faults. Because, like I said, the service industry has not grown from tipping culture, and because of that, people cannot get even paid the minimum wage.
Yeah, because of tipping culture, a lot of service workers don't actually get paid minimum wage. They get paid below minimum wage because they're expecting the tips to make the difference,
And
which
let's
isn't right at all because tipping is a voluntary action and it causes a negative feedback loop. Because think of this. Say you are someone that works a minimum wage job or a service job where you get paid below minimum wage and you are not making enough money to make ends meet. Say you go and you eat at Applebee's with your friend and you only have enough money to splurge on just the meal but no tip. The person that is serving you doesn't get a tip from you, meaning they also don't have as much money as they should have been paying for their labor, just as you did. It's a negative feedback loop because imagine there are multiple people out there that aren't making enough money to make ends meet, and the little money that they can scrape together to go out and eat something, they may not have enough money to go and tip. Now, some will say maybe you should just ration your money to tip. But why is it the responsibility of someone going out to eat to make the difference for the paycheck of the person that's working at the restaurant?
And that's why I hark on tipping culture so much, is because it shifts the responsibility of the company to the customer. And that should have been eradicated as soon as the US recovered from the Cold War, which we have not.
I mean, tipping culture is just
It's a consequence of an
antiquated.
antiquated system that we use to recover from economic hardship, and we refuse to get rid of because it was so beneficial to the companies not to pay their workers properly.
It's, to put it bluntly, it is a not a bug, it is a feature of capitalism, as it incentivizes wealthy capital owners to obtain more money by shorting their workers. Because think about it. If you're a wealthy capital owner and you're trying to maximize profits, and when I say wealthy capital owner, I mean like say like a CEO or even just like a high level executive, your goal is to make money, as much money as you possibly can. Tipping allows that to happen. Why would you stop tipping? You have no reason to if your sole goal is to make money. And so that is why the Great Resignation, in part, has come with a lot of criticisms with capitalism at large. Because the only reason these systems and these terrible working conditions are allowed to persist is because the profit motive within the economic system we work in incentivizes this treatment and rewards people who engage in this treatment. So that's why there's a lot of people criticizing the system of capitalism when they talk about the Great Resignation, is because capitalism as an economic
System.
system incentivizes the people at the top to short and abuse the people at the bottom as much as they can to maximize profit.
Right.
Like, that's really how it works, and it's really terrible, to be perfectly honest. That's why you're seeing the rise in so much like anti-capitalist sentiment. I mean, if you're on Reddit, you have probably noticed the meteoric rise of r/anti work,
Oh yeah, definitely.
which went from a very small subreddit to a massive subreddit that hits the front page now. And that's
Every day.
because it's part of a wider discussion. And let it be known that the reason this is happening now has been exacerbated by COVID. COVID made it abundantly clear
Oh, COVID made
just how badly.
every political problem worse.
Yeah,
It catalyzed society so much in every single one of its faults that now that we are partially, and I use partially in because we are not out of COVID yet, I say partially because of the fact that we are struggling now more than ever before because of COVID, and we do not see a way out of it.
yeah. And even if COVID is resolved, it doesn't change the problems that COVID has illuminated to people. That the jobs that they're working have the capabilities to pay them more and treat them better, and they actively choose not to do it.
Hell, I mean, how much money did Jeff Bezos make over COVID? At least 100 billion.
Yeah, which 100 billion to Jeff Bezos is, I mean, it's
Which,
a lot,
which
but he's
I'm,
already made so much more than that.
which I'm just making up a number here, but it's very high. And the fact that he did not pay any taxes, or I think it was either him or Amazon paid zero in taxes in one of the most recent years, in a big, massive leak in the past year.
Yeah.
I forget the exact details, but yeah, the fact that he or his company gets to bypass taxes that the rest of us have to pay is not fair. Being rich does not entitle you to skip our tax code.
Being rich does not entitle you to look down on your fellow man as someone undeserving of living a comfortable life.
Yeah. And
Just because you work as a McDonald's fry cook or an Amazon driver or working as a like salon, working in a salon or a hairdresser, or doing any type of like what is considered menial labor, you are not in any way deserving of being treated terribly just for working at those jobs. Those jobs are there for a reason. They contribute to some type of societal need, whether it's luxury or necessity. You're contributing to society in a positive way, and you should be rewarded as such. Because think of it like this: people don't treat janitors well. Imagine what happens if all the janitors up and leave. You got shit everywhere. And who's going to clean it up?
Both literal and both literal. Wait,
Literal and figuratively, you have shit everywhere.
yes.
Who's going to clean it up? The janitors. But the janitors aren't there because you don't treat them well and you didn't pay them enough for them to actually feel that this job was worth it. So now you got a whole bunch of trash everywhere and you need someone to pick it up.
In summary, we should not have poor people in a rich country. I'm just going to say that out loud.
I mean, it's exactly true. We are one of the wealthiest countries on the planet, and we have a very absurdly high level of poor people. And we are at the point where we could eliminate poverty within the United States, yet we actively choose not to for the idea that the people at the very top deserve even more money than they already have. Because here's the thing: when we say tax the rich and we say that the rich should pay more, this is not in any way us trying to say that they deserve to lose 100% of all their money. No. These people, if they were to pay their fair share in taxes and also ensure that their workers made livable wages and worked in very good working conditions, would still be multi-millionaires. They would still have the high-class dining and high-class lifestyle that they currently live. They would be able to comfortably have all the expenditures and luxuries for them and the generations after them in their family. They would have all of that, and you would still have people that could live comfortably. But the fact that we don't live in that world is a product of greed at the people at the top. And we should not be defending these people for being greedy. If you're a Christian, you know greed is one of the 7 deadly sins. And you know that excessive amounts of greed is bad. So why are we supporting people that are just consuming everything so greedily that everyone else suffers from it?
Because honestly, what's the difference from having an 800-pound sack of money and a 750-pound sack of money? To the rich, it shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
They should need to pay that extra 50 pounds, and I mean pounds as in the American weight, not British currency.
They should pay, yeah.
And that's what I mean in this analogy. But yeah, this the idea that they are so they are so transparent to their tax avoidance, and it impacts the economy so negatively that we are constantly going deeper and deeper in debt. And the fact that our taxes are going lower and lower and lower to the most upper echelon of society is a problem, and no one is willing to fix it on the top, because why would they?
Exactly. And this contributes to a whole host of problems. I mean, last week when we talked about Josh Hawley and how he was complaining about how young people aren't getting married anymore, they're not forming relationships, and men can't be quote unquote men anymore. Well, part of this problem is because of the fact that people aren't being able to be treated well and make enough money. It's expensive to be married and have kids. Kids are expensive. You want to know what would make it easier and incentivize more people to do it? Ensuring that if they go and work, they will make enough money to live and care for a child. And if 2 people can come together and do that, and and it makes it that much easier, you have more people incentivized to work. The reason why men are not masculine, whatever that means, and are just in their rooms playing video games and watching porn is because that is cheaper to do that than it is to subject yourself to the society that currently undervalues you for all your work and completely beats you down and wears you out to the point where you can't even go out and socialize even if you wanted to, because even if you had the energy to, it's way too expensive, which we will go way more into detail next week when we have a segment on social atomization and how that's affecting a lot of young people. So stay tuned for that next week. But this is just all to come back and say that the Great Resignation is a symptom of a much wider problem that has far reaching effects than you would realize.
Yeah. I'm glad that we took some extra time to talk about that.
Yeah.
I know 2 hours and 20 minutes is now the norm for us, considering that I keep complaining about 2.5 hour episodes, and we somehow keep managing to hit that mark.
Yeah. But I mean,
But
if
also,
we gotta talk, we gotta talk.
I really wanted to talk about this because this was something that I saw in real life, and I just need to make sure that we lead the rhetoric on this because conservatives have a grapple hold on
A
this.
stranglehold.
Well, same
Yeah.
thing, but a stranglehold on the entirety of the rhetoric concerning the Great Resignation, and we cannot let them continue to do that at the expense of the working class.
Yes. But also, I wouldn't just say conservatives, I would say liberals as well, because let us not forget that the Democrats in Congress and in the Senate also do not help us in these ways. They are also just as incentivized to allow this to persist as the Republicans are. So let us not act like the conservatives are the only ones doing this. The liberal Democrats in Congress are also perpetuating this cycle and profiting off of it. I'm looking at you, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer, and all those other members of the Democrats like Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin and all those other people, with really the only rare exceptions being members of the squad like AOC and Ilhan Omar and Bernie Sanders and such. But they're
Yeah,
such a rare minority that, I
yeah,
mean, let's be honest here.
we can only list them on our fingers.
Yeah, the majority of Congress and the Senate, of both Democrat and Republicans, are complicit in this. And they're very much complicit in allowing the problems that the Great Resignation is exposing to persist.
Yeah, honestly, very glad I was able to lead a segment this time and
Yes,
control the conversation.
most definitely. This was definitely something that has been really getting at you. And so it's really good that you're able to bring it up and talk about it in depth and all the problems that come from it.
Especially because this is an example where anecdotes matter because the anecdotes line up with the data.
Yeah,
It's been lining up like because this has been the consequence of everything building up ever since the Cold
yeah. Really, it's been a consequence of everything building up since we entered late stage capitalism.
War. Right.
Capitalism was an improvement to the system we had before in feudalism and was developing the country in a positive way, but was never meant to be permanent. It was always meant to be the next step to whatever would come afterwards. And we're currently stuck now with this late stage capitalism where it's ending at its lifespan, where we're seeing all the terrible things that come with it, and we're trying to extend its lifespan when we need to move past it.
Yeah, exactly. But I want to thank everyone for hearing out. I know this political segment was a little different than the norm that we're used to, but this needed to be said, and I'm happy to be able to say it.
Yeah, this was definitely a good episode. I hope you all enjoyed.
Yeah.
If you